The galaxy burns. The heretic falls. And the Emperor protects. Welcome, Imperial citizens. My name is Doug, and this is The Emperor Protects. I'm hanging out with my good buddy Dan from Cubic Shenanigans. How you doing, man?
All is well.
Sweet, and we are here today to chat about more short tales of grim darkness from the far future, but not too far. You know, it's not 40K. It's a semi-far future.
Sure.
And this is something we've been doing here for the last couple of weeks, just to keep things kind of short and brief, as we're both traveling and got a whole bunch of stuff going on in the world. So we both picked short stories from various Horus Heresy anthologies. And I took the bold move to leave the exclusively Sons of Chthonian one.
Yes.
Which, you know, big step for me. But I did find another good story to talk about today. And you have a tale for us as well. If there are any specific topics or things you'd like discussed, or you want to give us feedback on the stories we talk about today, you can hit me up on 2plus Stuff and Dan over at Cubic Shenanigans. I'll have all that information in the description below. But basically the thesis of the show is that we read the book so you don't have to. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Dan, who's going to introduce his story for us today.
Awesome. So I picked the story The Grey Raven, and it's by Gab Thorpe, who I absolutely love his stuff. And the opening thought here is you're very quickly going to say, what the hell is happening and why? It's, you know, in terms of setting the scene, it is a time very shortly after the Edict of Nicaea. So the librarians have been told not to use their powers.
Gotcha.
And our story centers around and this I thought was unusual. One of the reasons I liked it, you don't get a lot of these short stories about Raven Guard. You get even less about Raven Guard librarians. You don't even think of them as having librarians. But our story is about Balsar Katori, who is a very powerful, actually, Raven Guard librarian. And it starts out, he's on a ship translating from the warp into real space. And there's quite a bit of commentary at the beginning of the story of how he absolutely treasures this brief moment in time because there's utter silence. He's hearing nothing from the warp. He's not hearing anything from the people or the minds that are around him on the command deck. And he just treasures these few moments. With that, we are snapped into reality, and we find we're on the Wrathful Spirit, which is an Imperial Fist strike cruiser. And Captain Noritz is its commander. Now, when we say captain, usually in Horus Heresy, we think of the captain of a ship. This guy is not only the captain of the ship, he is an actual Space Marine captain. So he is quite a capable individual. He's in his, you know, armor and everything else on the bridge. And the ship has been working alongside the Raven Guard for several years, and now it's returning to Terra. And the captain and his Imperial Fists on board are absolutely thrilled to be back in Terra working alongside their parent legion again, because it has been years. Also on the bridge of the ship is Akatis, who is a custodian guard. Okay. All right. So Balsar.
Is it Custodes? Is that what you're supposed to say?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna kind of mix it up here. He can sense the emotions and the thoughts of everybody on the command bridge. And it doesn't matter how many barriers he's erected to try not to do it, because he's trying so hard not to use his powers, because he was sent by Corvus Corax on the orders that he needed to go see Malkador on Terra, because he had to reconcile the fact that he had used his powers at his Primarch's order, and Corvus wants him to kind of do penance or at least get forgiveness from Malkador. So he's trying very, very hard not to use any of these very powerful weapons he has. So one thought, however, was very prevalent that he could pick up of all the thoughts, and there was this overwhelming joy on the command deck, but it was not just the Imperial Fists, the custodians like Akatis just couldn't wait to get back to Terra, and get back to what they were born to do. So Balsar, on the other hand, conversely, he wants to get back to his own brothers and the
Sure.
Raven Guard. He's doing this because his Primarch ordered him to do it. These warning klaxons just sound all over the place, and all these defense arrays, warships, system monitors, they're all just pouring warning messages
Mm-hmm.
into the ship. And he Captain Norris chooses to respond to a very senior Imperial Army officer who's stationed aboard one of the comm stations. And the officer he gets right to it. He just says, "Hey, Norris, you need to hold station, await further instructions. If you power up your weapons, if you raise your void shields, you open comms with anybody else, we'll blow you out of the sky."
Oh wow. Okay.
You say, "Oh, okay."
So, Dan,
So,
this is post Nikea but pre Heresy? So this is like a weird thing, right?
well, it's during the heresy. It is
Okay.
during the heresy, but it's post Nikea.
Gotcha.
So there are bad things
Gotcha.
that are going on in the universe, which is one of the reasons that we got the response we did, because everybody is like super sensitive now because Istvan 5 has happened
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Istvan 3 has happened. So we're going to reference that actually. So uh, Norris tells the officer that a Cottis is on board the vessel, a custodian guard, and the officer kind of looks off screen behind him, and all of a sudden he disappears and another Custodes shows up on the view screen. And Akatis was like, "Hey, I vouch for this captain and his crew. Um, and they have been fighting for the emperor. They are loyal." And the other custodian says that the only way I can verify their loyalty is to do it in person.
Oh
And so
wow.
we're going to send over a boarding party and we're going to check you guys out. See, everybody is super nervous right now because of what's happened with those 9 legions going over to Horus. So Balsar and Norris look at each other because they recall the last time they were in the Sol system. The Imperial Fists were the ones who were enforcing security, and the Raven Guard were under suspicion, which was really weird that they're going, "Whoa, wait, what's happening?"
Yeah.
So the other custodian's name is Ludificus, and he talks about having the authority of the Sigillite. And Akatis says the custodian guard only answer to the emperor. Ludificus goes, "Well, it just so happens that Malcador is now the regent, appointed by the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So the Sigillite's word is the emperor's will." And that's just the way it is. And you can just feel the tension in the story at this point. Something is going on, and something not good is going to happen. So Captain Nortz breaks in. He asks about Dorn, and Ludovicus just says he's alive. That's all I can tell you. It's like, "Oh, well, that's helpful. Thanks a lot." Uh, and then Balsar steps forward and he tells Ludovicus that he's been sent by his Primarch to speak directly with the regent
Right.
regarding matters that pertain to the edict. And without warning, just out of nowhere, Ludovicus tells Akatis that threat protocols are now in effect. Once Ludovicus saw this librarian, he says threat protocols are now in effect. And Arcadis responds that he will not take authorization from somebody who's of lower rank. Ludificus goes, "Okay, do your duty. Authorization is authorus." And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose when he says the word authorus.
Hmm.
Now, just as for listeners, a point of reference, there is a Nathaniel Garrow story, and this word is used. Somebody discovers this word, and all hell breaks loose in the Nathaniel Garrow story. So there's something about this word and the sigillite that just is super sensitive. So
Interesting.
Balsar's prescience warns him like a second before Akatis. This is the guy who's been standing up for him, who's been on this ship with him. He swings his guardian spear at him and tries to like cut his head off, right? So he ducks, he dodges. Captain Yaris was screaming like, "What madness is this?"
Yeah.
You know, this space marine sees a guy who he trusts and considers a brother in Balsar being attacked. So he just screams at him. He goes, "Belsar, go! Just get out of here!" And he jumps on the back of the custodian. He's like got his, huge space marine arm wrapped around Akatis's neck, and um, his instinct, Balsar's, is that he's hearing this ceramite crashing and bolters are being cocked and all kinds of stuff. He just needs, with this overwhelming sense of confusion and urgency, he's gonna head aft and down to an area that's been set aside for him, like as a sanctum.
Okay.
And he he realizes, and this is the really scary part, that the only other time as an Astartes he's felt this confusion and urgency was on Istvan 5. He is a survivor of Istvan 5.
Oh.
Unbelievable. And he was one of the few Raven Guard that were actually there when the Iron Warriors opened up, or
Right.
the Iron Warriors opened up. He's helpless. He's confused. He can't comprehend what's going on. Same thing that he just
Right.
felt there. So he moves along the corridors. He sees several squads of Imperial fists running to their muster points. Boarding classes are being sounded. So Ludificus is actually sending more custodians over, as he promised. But they're thinking about it. There's only 7. I think there's 6 or 7 custodians on the Wrathful Spirit right now, but there could be dozens more.
Mm-hmm.
So Balsar's like, well, I can't just stay hidden because I can hide from 7 on this huge ship. I can't hide from
Right.
100, right?
Yep.
So the one thing that he seems to have in his favor is that Captain Norris and the Imperial Fist haven't joined the hunt for some reason.
Mm.
Just those custodians. He knew that he needs help, and the only person that he knows is going to help him is Captain Norris. So he found a comm panel. He keyed in the channel, speaks to the captain, and the captain listens and cuts the channel. Several minutes later, Norris and a squad of Imperial fists arrive in this chamber while Balsar's hiding. And he says that he has a plan for getting Balsar off the ship, but that he will not take the life of a custodian in the light of Sol. He will not do that. That's his gig.
Fair enough.
He will not pass through that.
Yep.
So then there's a great scene where Balsar and Norris and the Astartes have made it to a launch bay, but there's 4 custodians blocking their path. And there are more fists coming in, Imperial fists, and you're going, well, wait a minute, custodians versus Space Marines. Like, I don't know, how is this going to go? Because they have the numbers in their favor, right? But
Right.
obviously, on 1-to-1, we know what's going to happen. So
Get that 3 to 5
Balsar
out.
all of a sudden, right, and all of a sudden he feels like this uncontrollable urge to just use his psychic senses to start locating the custodians that are unaccounted for,
Ooh.
because he can sense them on the ship
Sure.
if he wanted to. But he struggles to remain true to his promise. Norris is struggling now with these custodians blocking his way to remain true to his personal promise, his personal code. And um, Akatis suddenly appears, and Nortz and Balsar engage him in hand-to-hand combat. And this is cool because in the end, what we have happen is Norris is laying dead. Like, he was fighting. You think of a Space Marine captain against a custodian? No, this was like a close fought battle. Norris actually had him a couple times, but he ended up killing Norris,
Ooh.
which, you think about this is the heresy, and all of a sudden you have custodians killing loyal Marines. Like,
Yep.
oh man, that's even worse than than loyalists versus heretics.
Yeah. It's a
And
third
so
party, really.
yeah, and Balsar sees Norris laying there dead, and he just, like, his psychic hood started fizzing, and like this blue aura just started appearing around his head. He was uncontrollably enraged, and he could have just like poof. He could have just turned this custodian to like ashes. He's that powerful, but he doesn't. And he starts trying to fight the guy. And, he's a librarian. I mean, he's still a space marine and stuff, but he didn't really have a chance. So all of a sudden, instead of doing this, he just drops to his knees and just gives himself over to Akatis. And Akatis walks up to him, takes his guardian spear and raises it over his head, swings his custodian spear and hits the wall just above Balsar's head. So now Akatis drops his spear and he speaks into his Vox link. He goes, "This is Akatis, code word disciple. Cease operations, return to quarters." Just like that, it's all over.
What?
And he says, "Balsar of the 19th Legion, will you submit to me and face the judgment of Malkador?" And Balsar just looks up at him and says, "I will." So now he's taken to a chamber very deep within the Imperial Palace. He's been sedated for most of the journey, but now he stands before the Regent and two Sisters of Silence, of course.
Right.
And strangely, though, he thought it was really weird. He could feel the dampening effect of their presence, but Malkador seemed completely unaffected. Like his psychic aura was so massive that he even actually saw Balsar did power radiating through and away from Malkador, despite the fact that he had two Sisters of Silence there. So that gives you an idea of how powerful this guy is,
yeah,
right?
it's quite brilliant.
And Malkador, to his credit, he expressed regret for the death of Captain Norris. He said it was not what was intended. And he also regrets the severity of the test he's just put the Raven Guard through. And all of a sudden, Balsar is like, "What? This was a freaking test. Like, do you know how many people could have died for your test?"
You could have added another Traitor Legion to your roster, man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So then, of course, he turns and he commends Balsar on his strength of will under extreme duress, obviously, as well as his physical prowess, because he did almost beat this custodian at one point in hand-to-hand combat. But he says that the strength of will and the physical prowess are qualities which I look for. And you're going, look for in what? Right? And Malkador says there are many librarians among the legions. He's not looking for psychic might alone. That he seeks those like Balsar who have shown temperament, loyalty, and a certain degree of stubbornness.
Yeah.
And he tells Balsar that he won't be returning to the Raven Guard. And so you can imagine how he feels about that. But he also says he's going to continue to serve with distinction. So when Balsar asks him who he will serve, this huge door opens in the back of the chamber. And you see an Astartes in gray Marxist armor with a very light kind of etching in the armor, and it's the eye of Malkador, right? And most of us who know the Horus Heresy would recognize this individual as a knight errant, one of the many that people like Nathaniel Garrow went out to hunt down for Malkador.
Yeah.
So there's obviously no other livery, insignia, nothing else. But this guy does have a psychic hood like Balsar. And Malkador says simply, "This is Brother Ogun. He will explain everything." And the story ends.
I love it.
It's so good. And it's interesting that they mentioned Ogun because he's one of the original 9 Grey Knights that were finally chosen by Malkador to serve in that chapter that he created, on Saturn and that stuff, one of the moons of Saturn on Titan. So it's interesting that they brought Ogun in. I just love this story first for the huge shift, an unexpected shift in the plot.
Yeah.
He absolutely did not expect this, and that this is where it ends up. That all this time he was just looking for another knight errant.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So like the test was regarding the Raven Guard, or was the
Hmm.
test regarding him specifically? Like, I guess what I'm saying is, it seems like he went in to apologize on behalf of Corvus. Generally, he did
Hmm.
it himself, but whatever. And then they were like, "Cool, apology accepted. We're just gonna buy you out of your company," and just kind of
Well,
took
yeah,
him.
kind of. I think though, I don't think that the Sigilite really, and obviously he knew why Balsar was there. The
Sure,
story doesn't
of
say
course,
that, but I think Malkador just didn't care about that at all. And because the whole thing of at one point, especially like no fear, when the word bearers attacked Calth,
hmm
at one point, uh, Gilliman was just like, "To hell with the edict. Use your powers, man." So he authorized his legion to just break the edict that said
that's
this
true.
is stupid,
He's not that
right?
much of a stickler. That's true.
Right. And so I think Malkador understands that he knows in his heart that it was kind of stupid. And so when Balsar came to him and was like, "I really don't care why you're here,
Yeah,
why you think you're here. I'm gonna let you know why you're here." And
I like that.
yeah, so
Really bad day to be an Imperial Fist caught in the middle of all of that, though.
oh my gosh, man.
So why
And
did you die? Well, we
I
wanted to do an entrance exam on this other guy to see if he
yeah,
deserves a promotion.
yeah. I I loved Captain Norris as a character.
hmm
I was so angry when he died. It was like, oh come on, let him get away with Balsar or something. But no, it didn't happen. But yeah, good story.
It's wonderful, awesome. That, yeah, I think it's a good one that highlights one why factions would fight each other, but just the extreme amount of, I guess, paranoia with every interaction. The
Mm,
second you come near
yes.
Terra, like, I don't know, the more we learn about how hard it was to just go to Terra, the more
Mm.
important that scene at the end of, man, all the book names just gerbil together. There was one where Alfarius gave Horus like the blueprints basically of Terra's defenses.
Oh
The
yes.
the more we learn about how hard it is to get in there, that scene is just like, what do you mean they mapped out the whole thing? It retroactively makes that so much cooler.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
okay, well, thank you for leading that one. I have a story as well, and I took a look at The Last Church by Graham McNeil.
Mm.
And so this one requires maybe a little bit of setup. Um, Essentially, we open our scene on a small church that's above, kind of on a mountaintop above a small town.
Mhm.
And to put this firmly in its time place, this is actually before the Emperor created the Primarchs. So we are on like
Mhm.
Unification Wars. He kind of gives a slight hint that that's kind of what's in development at one point in the story, but he's
Mm.
still conquering Earth. At that point, he was essentially one tyrant amongst many who just, he
Mm.
was the last one. He just kept winning and winning and winning and winning.
Mhm.
And this church it opens up on is very, I guess, minimalist, very humble. It's like a stone
Mhm.
thing. And essentially, it's all built around an artifact called the Lightning Stone, which we'll talk about. And it has a single priest, the last priest, named Uriah.
Mm.
And he's preparing for a midnight service, which was generally very popular, but has kind of gone out of vogue as of late as atheism has aggressively swept the earth thanks to the emperor. Um, and he's kind of, getting all the candles lit, ready for his service. And the door knocks, and a man walks in, super large man, looks like his hair's pulled back real tight, looks kind of grizzled, like a war veteran. Could have
Mm.
been a thief, could have been a local raider or something like that. But Uriah greets him kindly and essentially just kind of feigns, uber kindness. Like, oh, are you and your friends here for church? And like, obviously, this guy is clad in war gear, just trying to figure out his purpose and defuse
Sure.
things. And the man explains, kind of introduces himself, like, what should I call you? And the man, stranger, says, you can call me Revelation. He's like, that's a weird name. I'm like, okay, all right. And he's like, well, it suits my purpose. And he said, I have traveled very far because I heard that this was the last church on Terra. And I just wanted to
Mm,
come and I wanted to take it in. I wanted to ask you questions and try to understand why you do this when it looks like the world has changed and moved past
yes.
this. And at first, Uriah is very stoked. He's like, oh, yeah, well, take a seat, hang out. I'll get you, something watered or something like that, drink. The rest of my congregants will be here soon. And this man, Revelations, just very acidly says, no one else is coming. and the whole like mood shifts. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, it's just you and me tonight. I want to learn about this church. And like, it's clear there's people outside. So he's like, oh, okay. They're guards. That's not good.
Yeah.
And so they kind of sit together and they're looking around this little meager church. And it does have some really cool things. For example, on the ceiling is a famous fresco that's considered like a lost wonder of the old world. So it hasn't been painted yet in our universe, but somewhere between now and the year 30,000, presumably, it'll be painted on some nice chapel. And they're talking about, the inspiration of God being a part of this artist's work. Like, certainly without a divine inspiration, this couldn't have been done. And this stranger revelation is countering, like, well, that artist was hired by the church, and if a different church hired them, they probably would have painted something just as good for them. Does that, is that evidence of anything?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this nice little sparring. Occasionally, Uriah gets a little, he feels attacked a little bit, and so the conversation will diffuse. But overall, it's highly respectful amongst of just like why you believe what you believe. Are there alternate explanations? One of the things I love is that they sit at one point and Uriah pulls out a bottle of wine that he said his father was holding for him for when he got married. But of course, he's a 70-year-old priest. He's not getting married. Or maybe he's 80, I think it was. But he's not getting married. So they crack open the bottle and the two share it. And what I love is that at certain points, Revelation has to ask forgiveness. He's like, you know what? I was being rude when I said that. I'm really sorry. Please continue. Which is going to matter later. Uriah is at some points somewhat combative with Revelation in their back and forth of what it means, what faith is and the nature of it. So the two of them, after their little drink, go for a tour of this church. They kind of reach a point where they're like, just show me, like, why is this place special? Why do we revere it? Like, did a god put this rock here? Uriah was kind of struggling with, like, that's a little rude to just ask someone, why are you holy? But whatever. And so kind of fractious there. And Uriah goes on to explain this story that in this region of the world, there was a tale of a blind and deaf holy man who was out praying one day and a storm rolled in. And as he was kind of slowly feeling his way home, the storm rolled in too fast. And so he hid under a rock, and this is that rock. At some point during that storm, it was struck by lightning. The man was blasted away, and his vision and hearing were restored to him. So now he ran back to town, able to, see and stuff like that, and told the whole story. He became the priest, and they formed this church. Revelation is utterly and completely unimpressed by this story. He's just like sitting there looking at it. He puts he lets the guy speak, but like he puts his hand on. He's like, okay, it's just hermatite. It's just rock. It's just generic rock. And he starts going through like, oh, I've heard things like this of lightning being a cause of a reversal of a disorder, but usually it's when it's in a hysterical patient or something like that. But it is possible. And a theme that comes up, I think, multiple times, because I sat with this and read a few other perspectives, and I didn't see anyone else mention this, is this idea of saying there are other explanations for your beliefs. And Uriah's comeback is, I need no other explanation. And
Okay.
they hit that line, I think, at least 3 points in some iteration throughout their multiple conversations.
Okay.
Which is it's to me, I think, very interesting. That Revelation is trying to bring reason, and the point is he's not looking for it. I don't need reason for these things. I just have my faith. So Uriah at one point essentially says, I know my beliefs are concrete because at one point I had a personal experience. And
Oh, okay.
Revelation was like, okay, well, that's different. Now, everybody has a personal experience. It's convenient that you can't argue it, but please tell me your experience.
Sure.
And at this point, it becomes clear to Uriah, this is the last night that this church is going to be here. Like,
Yeah.
Revelation has alternated from seeming warm and inviting to aggressive and scary. He clearly has armed dudes outside, and it knows that the Emperor has this church in his sights. He's like, well, maybe Revelation is a warlord who's trying to curry favor, so he came here to learn about it, and then he's going to kill us all and wipe this whole thing off the map. So at this point, everyone kind of lightens up, because at this point we all assume what the plot is going to be like.
Yes.
Uriah is like, you know what? I got a better idea. And he goes to his desk and he pulls out a second bottle of brandy that's like way fancy. He's like, if we're all going to die, we're going to drink something really good. And he sits down, he gets 2 like copper goblets. He and Revelation share a drink. Revelation goes to drink it, and this little old man Uriah is like, hey, don't be an idiot. Swirl it around a little. Sniff it. Enjoy it. Think about it. And what I love is, we're going to talk about this later, but just telling Revelation how to do something was an immense amount of joy that I felt reading this. So, he talks about the nature of experience and like how the appreciation of these various flavors and stuff like that. Like, there's some spark of divinity in all these things that we enjoy as humans.
Yeah.
Which is really important as they settle in with their drinks. And Revelation says, okay, we're all cool. We're all settled, enjoying our wine or whatever we're drinking. Tell me your story. And it happened at a place called Gaduare. Uriah sets up kind of the tone of how he got there. And this story is essentially, he was a spoiled brat who was a pain in the butt and had everything handed to him on a silver plate, but then was like, I need adventure. I feel rebellious. And he spent his youth traveling the world. Basically, towards the end of it, trying to find a place where the Emperor had not conquered, or where they weren't paying homage to him.
Okay.
From his youthful perception, Uriah saw the world as essentially just trading one tyrant for another. And he wanted to find a place where people did not like the Emperor just because they wanted to be their own. They didn't have to be against him, just wanted to live alone. And he travels the world doing a bunch of that. He does a lot of crisscrossing. He's sort of like playfully describes himself as a thief. He would just go into places and take stuff, and then his little guard from his dad would take him home. And at one point, he hears whisper. I'm trying to find the guy's name. Habulek is a local warlord somewhere far out in the North Africa deserts, which is North Africa once the world is blown into oblivion. And
yeah, of course,
whatever. Not as we know it, but out there, this guy named Habulek is doing a bit of a rebellion. He's gotten a few towns together to start burning all icons of the Emperor, and they're trying to create essentially a free state. And he hears about this, hears about the initial rebellion. He's like, that's where I want to go. And he just goes straight there. At the city of Gaduare, that is where this assembled army under Habulek, this rebel army, got itself built up, made defenses, and essentially enticed the Emperor's Thunder Warriors, Space Marines didn't exist yet.
Yes.
But Thunder Warriors to come take it. And at this point, there were 50,000 of them, I think. So it was like 50,000 Gajuarans, including Uriah, versus I think like 10,000 Thunder Warriors. So the odds were 5 to 1. At this point, the Gajuarans charge. The Thunder Warriors, in an instant, wipe out the first 5 whole divisions of humans coming at them. And Uriah was in rank number 6. And the only reason he survived is as he was charging, a bone fragment from somebody else being exploded by a bolter shell shot at him and hit him in the back of the head, and he went down as the cascade of bullets reaped everybody else around him, basically.
God.
So later on in the book it says in 1 hour 50,000 people were killed. I mean, it's just like, but
that's insane.
Not with any aircraft, just dudes walking towards each other, which is insane. So yes, he was hit by shrapnel and goes down. Everybody else was butchered in minutes. One of the quotes that I pulled out of there was, "This wasn't war. This is mechanized butchery." But there's no vehicles. It's just the Thunder Warriors walking in a straight line, hacking everything, blasting it with bolters. Yes, he had never seen, he's trying to find where the line of the Emperor's kingdom is. He's never seen them fight, which is like, it was a different experience. So at this point, Uriah kind of comes to on the battlefield. He's hearing all these unbelievable sounds. A few times in the book, the sound of bolter shells like have a vaguely PTSD effect on him as he recalls them. The like splattering sounds of bodies as they're all being shredded apart, all that kind of stuff. And at this point, he runs away from the battlefield. Luckily, no one took a shot at him. And he just runs until he passes out. And at this point, Revelation's like, this is a lot of setup. Where's God?
It's true. Yeah.
And
that's a good question, though.
Yes,
that's a good question.
So when Uriah comes to after the most horrible slaughter or whatever, he starts rethinking his life and just how pointless it all seemed. That like yesterday they were so full of vigor and hope and renewal, and now it doesn't exist anymore. He didn't rout them; he destroyed them, kind of a thing. And as he's thinking this, a figure comes and stands above him, one wreathed in golden light, a face that looks perfect, and essentially grabbed him off the ground and picked him up and stood him on his feet. In doing so, healing all the wounds, like the bone shrapnel thing, restored his body and his limbs. And this is Uriah's experience of standing with God. Uriah stopped crying because of the tragedy and started crying because of how beautiful this figure was. And once he's on his feet, God spoke to him and said, "Why do you deny me? Accept me and know that I am the only truth and the way." And at this, Uriah could not reply. It's a little bit clear because their conversation gets interrupted by something minor, but it's unclear if the God walked away or if Uriah passed out. But that was his experience, was just God saying, "Why are you denying me? Accept me."
Okay.
And we flash back to Revelation hanging out with Uriah 50-something years later. He, Revelation in this case, is sitting there going like, there had to be some other story. You were sitting there almost dead, rethinking your life and all its context. Could it not be that you had an experience and you just perceived it through a religious lens? And again, I need no other explanation. That's again where this note comes up. Even if it exists, I don't need it. And so after this event, Uriah returns home. He finds out that his wealthy, beloved family was all wiped out with raiders. He took the few artifacts he could find, like a really nice clock, the bottles of wine that they've drunk in this story so far, and he just started wandering when he rolled up to this small town with a tiny church at the top of the hill, and he said, "That's my life's mission. I'm going to say that God saved me, and I'm no longer going to deny him. I'm going to serve him starting with that church. And that's basically how Uriah got here. So at this point, Revelation asserts, those bandits who killed your family, I want you to know that the Emperor sent a whole bunch of kill squads everywhere to go wipe those bandits out. So they got theirs in the end. And Uriah says, good to know, but honestly, I don't care. I just assume God will judge them when it's all over. And at this, Revelation has a genuine moment of respect. Of I respect the fact that you don't need personal vengeance. That you can just let that go. That's really great. Which I love. I love that idea of a genuine mutual respect. At this point, the discussion that we're having as they are finishing up their fancy drinks, it kind of moves away from Uriah's personal story to a discussion of religion as a whole. This is how you got here, but what is the system that you are encouraging by doing this? Uriah puts forward a few arguments that, without religion, the world would devolve into anarchy. And Revelation points out, first of all, we're already in anarchy if things are not going well on Terra during the Unification Wars.
Yeah, right.
And he points out numerous times in history, which, to point out, when he mentions them historically, it's still our future. It hasn't happened yet. But he talks about all these religious schisms that have yet to happen and things that have just plagued humanity's entire history. And where religion has divided us and led to slaughter. They discuss the veracity and the morality of the Bible. Essentially, do you take it literally? Because some of those tyrants in history did the things they did because they took this book literally.
Yes.
Do you take it symbolically or allegorically? Because that's where you get what's the word I'm looking for? Denominations, as you have different opinions on what is literal and what's not. And as they're going through this, Uriah sometimes is more combative, sometimes he's more defensive. And he essentially points out that religion or not, people have been terrible to each other forever. So it's kind of like a correlation does not imply causation.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Okay, no. Good.
But essentially saying that, people used religion as an excuse, but they wanted to do that to each other. It's not really religion's fault. Fair enough. Revelation was actually kind of fair point. I like that. The nature of what religion brings to people as far as a spiritual comfort was put forth by Uriah. And at this, Revelation was if someone feels better about dying, it doesn't really matter in the grand scope of the universe. It's great for them, but it's not worth the other things that come with it. He point blank asked Uriah, "Are you afraid to die?" Uriah said, "No. I've atoned for my sins. I've lived my life the way I want, and if I were to die, so be it." He's like, "That's rad." Revelation again, another moment where he has respect. He asks then why people who believe in God grieve, because logically your dead loved ones are going to paradise. You should be either A, celebrating, or B, raucously joining them.
Yes.
And this whole back and forth is starting to get Uriah a little bit agitated. And he starts fumbling around with other things in the church, trying to say benevolent words, essentially halfway acting like he's going to do his midnight service as usual. Stop pestering me. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. You can go away, your Revelation, whenever you want. And at one point when he's fed up with the conversation, Uriah says, I'm not playing games with you anymore. Just leave if you came with a combative attitude. And Revelation says, all right, no more games. And while Uriah is fiddling with a candle, the entire cathedral begins to illuminate with golden light as the Emperor of Mankind reveals himself to be Revelation. And so at this point, Uriah has a massive spiritual moment where he is on his knees immediately recognizing the Emperor as both who he is and also the person that he met on the fields of Gajuare.
Yes.
So this is the second time he's met his own god, which is pretty cool. Snaps. You're right. And at this point, the Emperor now takes his turn, right? Up this whole story, we've been discussing why Uriah does what he does. And now it's the Emperor's turn to explain what he's doing. I'm uniting people. One banner, one people, one Imperium. And we're not stopping with Earth. Like, the point is not to get you all under my fist. The point is we're going to reclaim the galaxy. And this is the only way to do that. The scope of all this really sinks into Uriah's brain, who agrees with him, and they start walking out of the church together. And before I go any further, I just want to point out that, like, this is why I laughed so hard when Revelation was being reprimanded on drinking wine wrong,
Yes.
and just stuff like that, where it's just like literally anybody else would be eviscerated by a custodes for saying anything half as rude to the Emperor. And he's just like,
you just criticized God.
yes, you idiot.
It's true. So true.
So anyway, I just thought I got a great kick out of that. But it also makes all those moments where now we know the Emperor had a genuine respect for this person that he could not fathom agreeing with. Which I like. I think that was a great representation. So the Emperor and Uriah are now walking out of the church. The Emperor puts a huge jacket around the old man. And as they're walking out, a bunch of Thunder Warriors start to assemble at the base of the church with torches. They have grenade launchers. They're getting ready to destroy the last church. As they start the task, Uriah is having a lot of conflicted feelings. Obviously, he's been the steward of that building for 50 years, there and abouts. It's full of the last artifacts of religion. There's a Bible in there. There's the fresco we talked about, obviously the rock of the lightning stone itself. All this mythos and just its significance, I think, is probably the more apt word. And he thinks about what he's about to do and stops, and he talks to the Emperor again and thanks him for his time, acknowledges everything he said. Right, the problem with fractious natures of humanity, that disunity threatens to make us go extinct, that all the things the Emperor said weren't wrong, but he also looks at his church and decides that beauty, that aspect of humanity is not something he's willing to get rid of, and decides that even if the Emperor is right about making a better world, it does not have to be a world that he wants to live in. And decides to turn and then walk right back into the building as it's being lit on fire, and they're loading grenades to fire at it. And essentially the Emperor just lets him go with a nod and a deep respect, and the last church on Earth is obliterated. That is The Last Church by Graham McNeil. So, this book instilled a lot of thoughts in me. It's like an hour and 10 minutes or something like that long, I think.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story. As I don't want to get too much into the minutia of picking apart religious arguments and atheism and that kind of stuff. Believe what you like. What I will say is that as someone who was a believer and is now not, I do think it was a very responsible depiction of these debates and the counter arguments and why people feel the way they do.
Yes.
But more than that, if we're just sticking to the 40K universe, I love the fact that some of the stuff Uriah says tell me that the Emperor had a chance to learn the lessons about what was going to go wrong with his sons. Specifically, Lorgar, with attention to the fact that some people want to view this world this way. You can't make them. They will choose a different world. You know what I mean? And that misunderstanding of this aspect of mankind, to me, is what doomed the Imperium at the start of just he didn't account for that. This is just a facet of humanity. No matter how right he was, he didn't account for it.
It's the drive to believe in something bigger than yourself.
Sure.
In people. And I mean, you're so right. That's is one of the reasons I love this story, because it makes me reconsider the way that the Horus Heresy and Black Library treat religion. and faith, because those are two different things to me. This is, again, my opinion,
Sure.
that religion and faith are two very different things. And, you know, it was, when you think about the whole, uh, the whole religion that Ephraim Keeler started,
Yes.
and the worship of the emperor, this was like anathema to him. But
Mm-hmm.
he he didn't understand. This is a great example. This story is that, and you said, he kind of didn't get it,
Yes.
and which is, he didn't understand the power that the imperial church was going to have. He didn't understand the power of these people believing in something bigger than themselves, and it was him, which made him angry.
Yeah.
But but Lorgar was smart in one way, in that he understood that people feel this need to worship something.
Yes.
And I just finished reading or listening to Godblight again, which is the third book on the Plague Wars, which is when Gilliman has come back, but it relates to what we're talking about here, in that Gilliman, of course, was a Primarch during the time when the Imperial was secular,
Yes.
right? And he comes back into Imperium is exactly the opposite of what the
Yeah.
Emperor intended. And so, of course, when he hears or sees these people talking about faith, and these miracles that the Emperor's power and faith in the Emperor, they use the word faith, by the way, a lot in these stories. But Gilliman, this is a Primarch, right?
I know.
He's seeing things that absolutely have no other explanation other than these people had faith. They had this incredible, unbreakable faith. And this caused things to happen. And Gilliman's like, wow, like, it's a real thing. He can't deny it. It happened in every one of the three books, that he
Yes.
saw some huge act of faith that literally turned the tide of battle.
That's
And
awesome.
it's just like, no, it wasn't Space Marines and it wasn't me. Faith saved me. Like, somebody else's act of faith saved me.
Sure. Yeah.
Act of sacrifice or martyr. So I think it's really cool that you wanted to do this story, because it does, I agree with you, kind of. Well, we've had conversations before about how much of a bonehead on several occasions the emperor was.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and choices he made and the way he treated some of his sons. But yeah, I think this is a great story, again, to illustrate how
He,
this entire
yeah.
world treats the subject of religion, and I like it.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's
like I said, it seemed respectful. At no point did it make it seem like the person who believed in God was a moron or anything like that. It
yeah,
was,
yeah,
um, I don't feel that way. But
right.
it highlighted, like, even the scene where Uriah told the emperor to, like, how to drink wine. I was just thinking to myself, like, right, the emperor drank the whatever it was, wine, brandy, as a utilitarian function. He enjoyed the taste, but he wasn't going to let the experience, like, kind of become its own thing that he's pursuing. And then you look at
Sure.
someone like Fulgrim,
Sure.
who that's literally all he did. Where, you know what I mean? Like, his dad wasn't like him. He wasn't like your father. Like, like, like when an actor gets born in a small town in Texas.
Sure. Yeah.
But it makes sense that, like, he would later on find something that his father denied him or didn't enjoy or espouse or
Mhm.
whatever, and let that consume him. Like, I don't know, it's all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this story. I actually listened to it twice yesterday just to get prepared for it, because Uriah goes through so much detail in his life, but it is a very interesting story.
Yes.
What a unique perspective amongst the billions in the galaxy at that point.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, so that was The Last Church by Graham McNeil. You have any other thoughts on that one?
No, just a very powerful story.
Yeah, I
And
think
it brings out a lot of the stuff, that we mentioned, I think.
For sure. And that story was in the was it the compilation or anthology Looper Calls War?
Hmm.
And I think I'm gonna try to read some more in that one for our next one of these we do next Emperor Protects.
Okay.
So I don't actually know what the rest of the book's in there. I was the first one. I was like, this is baller. So
Sure.
sweet. Well,
Sure.
I'll go ahead and wrap us up here. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have suggestions, as we said before, or feedback, let us know. I am working on some Sons of Horus for Horus Heresy the game, and Dan's crushing some White Scars. At some point, we're
So
gonna get together and have a little escalation league day. There we go, and get a game in, and we'll be sure to share that with you guys. So, thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time. Happy wargaming, and may the Emperor protect.